The Behind the Ears podcast crew would like to thank the following sponsors for their generous support. If you have a little one and you're going to Walt Disney World, you're going to need a stroller. I'll tell you what, KingdomStrollers.com is the place where you want to look into. I'll tell you, I've destroyed my fair share of strollers while at Walt Disney World, and those things are not cheap. But getting something from KingdomStrollers.com, they'll be able to help you pick out the perfect stroller for you. And the nice part is that because they're a Disney preferred provider, they'll be able to drop it off and pick it up right from your Disney resort at no extra charge. So if you don't want to necessarily destroy your stroller in the process and you want to have a great Disney vacation with your little one, contact KingdomStrollers.com and they'll set you right up. That's KingdomStrollers.com. Do you want to save around 40% off Disney's prices for deluxe on-property accommodations? Contact DVC-rental.com. They help out Disney Vacation Club owners rent out points that they're not going to use. These points mean savings for you on your next trip at Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Vero Beach, Florida, and Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. The DVC member books everything in your name, just like any other reservation. And if you ever decide that you want to become a DVC member, you can check out our sister company, BuyAndSellDVC.com. As a licensed realtor, they sell DVC contracts for members at a savings of 30 to 40% off Disney's prices. And if you're looking to sell your contract, BuyAndSellDVC.com has one of the industry's lowest commissions at only 6.5%. Again, that's DVC-rental.com for your rental needs and BuyAndSellDVC.com to buy or sell into the Disney Vacation Club at a large discount. And make sure you tell them that the Behind the Ears podcast crew sent you. Hey everybody, it's Mr. Chris, and I got to tell you about Expedition Roasters. Listen, I'm a pretty big coffee drinker, just like a lot of you are, but these people have got coffee right. Their coffees are made from selectively sourced premium and specialty grade Arabica beans. They provide the absolute best flavor and aroma, and select roasts even come directly from a single estate farm for a truly perfect cup that is never bitter. They've got awesome Disney-inspired flavors such as Roundhouse Roast, Route 66, Skipper's Brew, Dark Side Roast, Redhead Rum, and one of my favorites, Bob Slatter's Brew. Listen, if you want to have the taste of Disney in every cup, give them a try today. Expeditionroasters.com, and Behind the Ears podcast listeners gets an extra 20% off your first order by using the coupon code EARS20. That's right, EARS20. And you can find them over at Expeditionroasters.com. Brew your happy place. You're listening to the Behind the Ears podcast, because everybody does Disney differently. What's up, everybody? It's Mr. Chris here with another episode of the Behind the Ears podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. And boy, do we've got an interesting show just for you. You'll notice that once again, my co-host, Uncle Danny, is not with me. That's right. The holiday is really taking a toll on him, and he is at work still. It was one of those cases today where I accidentally hit his button instead of my boss's button on my phone today, and I could just tell that he was working his tail off. I'm like, dude, sorry, didn't mean to call you. He goes, well, good hearing from you. Won't hear from me again for a while. I'm like, yeah, I know. Have a great one. Take it easy. Yep, bye. It's one of those things that I miss my co-host. But that's okay, because I've got our excuse me. I've got our viewing audience that's going to join me today virtually through the comments section. And I got to be honest with you, I'm really looking forward to this. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to hit up on the news, but you know what my biggest problem of it is? It's just that I think the news is what it is, right? But I think we need to talk about some of these things. So let's try this. It's time for Behind the Ears Podcast News. All the news you could use around Walt Disney World. All right, let's go ahead and start off with, let's start off with something that happened today. I got bombarded with a ton of messages today about the bus accident that happened over by Epcot between two Disney buses. And, one rear-ended another. I mean, that's really what happened. And this was an accident. There were some people that were sending me messages about it and, sending me links, which is great. I really appreciate it. People were basically posting a lot of different things over on the community page. We did kind of pare down some of those posts, mainly because we wanted to try to keep some things neat and tidy. But the interesting part to this whole thing was not that it was not that it was just an accident. And yes, 15 people went to the hospital with minor injuries. There was no real major injuries that were at least projected in the news or anything else like that today or tonight for that matter. But, it's a real significant event. I mean, let's face it. Accidents can happen at Walt Disney World just like anywhere else, to be honest with you. And I saw a lot of people, not necessarily within the WDW community page, but I saw a lot of people post across the internet, across Facebook, across social media on basically their hatred of, for Disney buses and other forms of Disney transportation. And maybe hatred is a little bit too harsh of a word, but there was a lot of sarcasm, that was for sure, at some places. And I can be honest with you, I wasn't really appreciating it. The problem of it is, and I want people to challenge me on this. I mean, tell me what you feel about this sort of thing, because sometimes I get really tired of hearing all the negativity on social media because something happened. And things do happen. While you're at Disney, there is this thing called real life, and real life happens. There are some things that really happen. Accidents happen. I know everybody has heard me tell the story of seeing a flipped over car over by Disney Springs in the middle of the road, and you try to figure out how in the world did someone flip over a full-size family sedan. I just don't understand it sometimes. And then you have bus accidents. And this isn't the first time Disney Transportation has been involved with like a bus accident. We know that things do happen, and they don't happen very often. They happen rarely. I mean, I would definitely classify it as rarely. In fact, I would bet that if you look at per passenger mile that is transported across all the streets across Walt Disney World's campus, it has got to be one of the safest modes of transportation, even above and way beyond normal auto transportation. I would be willing if anybody could challenge me on that. But the fact of the matter is that I heard a lot of people say, oh, this is just another reason for me to drive my own car. Oh, this is, Disney's trying to get us to use minivans. Oh, this is, the reason why we need more monorails. Oh, this is the reason why we need the gondola system starting up too. By the way, we're going to be talking a little bit about that too. And, the thing of it is that I just really have a problem with it. And I'm sorry to sound like I'm going off on a rant tonight. And I'm starting off not on a very magical foot. That's not my point. My point is that I think we need to look at it in a really logical light for a minute before we start making a lot of comments in social media land. John actually puts it really well. He goes, look how many routes a bus makes a year at Disney. And he puts, you're less than a very, very small, less than 0.00001% chance of an accident. Well, I don't know if it's that small of a chance of an accident, John, but I would definitely say that I think that it's a very small chance. How many years have I been going to Disney? How many years have I been using Disney transportation? And I've never had anybody have an incident. I've never been on a bus that's had an incident. Now, that's me, right? And unfortunately, we have 15 people that say, well, their counter of luck went back down to 0. And there were people reporting saying I was on that bus, and they were, basically saying they went to the hospital, they got checked out, and, they're going to get their like they have to find their own way back to Disney via taxi or whatever. They're going to get reimbursed for that sort of thing. And everybody is, first off, I hope everybody recovers very quickly from, the bumps, bruises, scrapes, bumps to the head. I hope that everybody, by the time this podcast airs, is, way recovered from that. And it did not necessarily ruin your vacation. I'm sure Disney is going to probably do something to return some magic to the whole thing. But, it's one of those cases I really felt bad. And by the way, I am certainly, not ripping on anybody making any comments whatsoever. But I really do have to say, this is a real thing. This really happened. It's 15 people that really had a bad day today. That's not cool. Sometimes we say, oh, it rained at Disney and it ruined my vacation. Or, my room wasn't perfectly clean. It ruined my vacation. I think these guys they've kind of take the cake for today. I'll be honest with you. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. Mary actually puts this up there. This is kind of interesting. She says, I was leaving the airport and saw a car come around the exit ramp and flip over because it just had started to rain. It was slick and they might have taken the turn a little bit too fast. Scary. Yeah. Even some of the basic things can happen, especially in the rain, especially in Florida. Joanne basically makes a comment. She goes, I've always loved the buses. Even when I'm exhausted and have to stand while holding my son on the way back to the resort, I still appreciate not driving myself around property. Joanne, I'm with you. And, I've been, ever since I've been going to Disney with my family, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to have to fold up a stroller and have my wife or myself hold my son in our arms, and especially on a very crowded bus. And I'm not even going to go into the whole area of, anybody getting out of their seat for, my wife holding an infant child or anything like that. I'm not going to go down that path because we've talked about that before, and we'll probably rant on that later. But the fact of the matter is that, it happens. We've survived it. It's been cool. It's not really that big a big deal. Even Heather says, she stands up for Disney here and basically says, as many times as those buses go round and round all day, sometimes there will be accidents. How many times do we hear about a car getting into an accident? Not often. Why? Because it's not usually news. But anytime an incident happens with Disney transportation, boom, it's on the news. It's on podcasts like this. It's all over the internet. It's just something to, something to put up there. And even Mary says with Disney's numbers, they're eventually going to have an accident. It's life. Absolutely. It's life. But Rhonda does basically make a point. I was just making this point myself. The only problem I have with the buses is how they pack them sometimes. And I don't disagree with you, Rhonda. I really don't. I mean, sometimes those buses really get jam-packed with people, and it doesn't necessarily help, but I've never had a problem when I was holding on to something. I've never had a problem when I was holding on to the handrails or the little hand straps or sitting down or holding on to the seat. Which, my take is, maybe I will rant on this for a second. Maybe that means that people, who are taller or stronger or whatever, maybe they need to, if they're physically able to, stand up and hold on from above, while smaller, younger, older guests, whatever, however you want to put it, are able to sit down in a little bit more stable of a position, especially if they have young kids. My kids, whom I'm very proud of, and I say it often, but it's very true. My kids will automatically get up and offer their seats to people. I don't have to tell them. And I don't know how I taught them that. I will get up and offer my seat to people. I think that it helps safety, in my opinion. Safety is not just the responsibility of Disney. Safety is the responsibility of everybody. I hold on to that strap up there. I put it around my wrist and I just hold on to it. And yeah, there have been some times where buses have made some emergency maneuvers type of thing. Maybe I would accidentally lean over and meet somebody that I didn't quite want to meet. Or I should say kind of unexpectedly. I mean, hey, who wouldn't want to meet Mr. Chris, right? All right. But it's just one of those cases. So I agree with you. Rhonda. They can pack them in sometimes pretty good. Justin even made a comment, that's why I invested in the pocket stroller for our granddaughter. It's the best. I had a great stroller. It kind of like folded in half and then folded in again into like a cube type of thing. It almost looked like a pack and play, but a whole lot smaller. It was awesome. I loved that stroller. It was really cool. I can whip that thing closed in a second. Chris is our guy in the street. He basically says, I'm actually surprised. It doesn't happen more often. When driving Uber around Disney, I see tourists that aren't used to these roads down here cutting buses off all the time. Yeah, about that. The fact of the matter is that we as tourists, we are not familiar with the area. We're really not. We're not familiar with the roads. We're not familiar how things turn. We sometimes panic because we miss a stop and maybe we don't know how to recover from a missed stop. Or what happens if you accidentally go down a road that says cast members only, things like that. We panic. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know where we're going. And sometimes you just have to stop and say, whoa, time out. No one's going to arrest you by accidentally going down a cast member only area. I'll tell you that right now. You can always turn around somewhere. You may have to drive a mile, but you can always turn around. It's just one of those things. Timothy also makes mention, I appreciate the buses also. We had a driver that was very aggressive. He literally slung people forwards that were standing up because of how close he was following the bus in front of him. It was scary. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get a driver that might seem a little bit of aggressive. Then again, we don't necessarily see everything through his or her eyes. And sometimes I think we need to be very careful about what we say and how we judge those types of things, simply because, let's face it, we don't know what's going through their minds. What are they seeing? How are they reacting? A little bit of being thrown around may be the alternative to having something a lot worse. We don't really know. It's just one of those things. And, Wendy also makes mention, I'm not sure why people are saying this is the reason they drive through, since accidents can happen while you're driving too. I've witnessed my share of accidents. Okay. I know most of the time I drive lately, I need to stay out of accidents because the vehicle I have is the vehicle how I'm going to get home. Accidents do happen, and I pray that no one ever has to deal with that themselves. But it happens. So, and this one, the driver got a reckless driving ticket. Can't really blame Disney for that. Mistakes happen. And, it's just one of those things. Gordon makes mention, the only problem I have with buses is how long it takes them to load wheelchairs sometimes. It seems some drivers are good at it. Some are clueless. Some are better at it than others. Very true. But I know from my own personal experiences, when I had my mom with us, there were some bus drivers that were very helpful, but all of them did one thing. They all made sure that my mom was safe, that the scooter was properly secured, that she was comfortable where she was at, because she had some pretty good mobility problems. So I will definitely give them kudos for that. So I like how this, I have to say this just because Faith makes me laugh a little bit here. I'm a horrible bus surfer. That's the first time I've heard that phrase, bus surfer. I am going to use that. That is awesome, Faith. Kind of short for the overhead rails and not always near one of the vertical ones. I get it. I totally get it. And, my daughter would fall into the same category because, she's like 5 foot nothing. 5 foot nothing and weighs 105 pounds soaking wet with her clothes on after she's eaten a big meal. Yeah, I'd get it, and, it's not everybody can hold on. And that's, one of those things that we try to realize, right? let's see. Trish also makes mention of this. From what I heard, one woman was seriously hurt, arm broke in 2 spots, and needed immediate surgery. Not sure if that changed. I didn't see that in what I read, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm sure there are more accurate reports than what I saw. It's really one of those things, but it's kind of hard. Now, Justin also mentions, I really hate how they move buses to the center lanes. We're not in Europe. No, but I'll tell you something. Those bus lanes have really helped a lot with traffic flow. There's two things I don't always understand, mainly because I don't have them a lot around here. Bus lanes and roundabouts. Okay. I'll be really honest about the roundabout thing. I think they're crazy, but that's beside the point. But the big point to what I'm getting at is, once you see how the buses react to the bus lanes, then you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't they do that sooner? By the way, Chris wants to say this. I want to make myself clear by saying that it was not meant to be a dig at tourists, referring to his comments earlier. I was only mentioning because he sees people do that to buses. Like Chris said, it's because they panic. It's not their fault, but it does create possible accidents. Chris, I appreciate you clearing that up, because I do believe that sometimes when we're not familiar with the surroundings, we as tourists, we as guests in the area, we do have a tendency to panic, right? And I'll never forget the first time I went to Walt Disney World. I took a wrong turn, and yes, I had a GPS, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to chill. I'm going to let Nancy Neverlost tell me. Yes, this was a long time ago. I'm going to let Nancy Neverlost tell me where I need to go. And sure enough, I did a kind of a loop and ended up where I was going about 3 or 4 minutes later than what I was expecting. Fact of the matter is that I had to relax a little bit because I knew I was going to get where I needed to go. And I think people need to realize that. So, or Trish also mentions, people complaining about waiting for buses also causes the bus drivers to drive faster to not get complaints. My whole take on it is, sometimes if you're a bus driver, you're darned if you do, if you're darned if you don't. And it's not fair, because I realize that everybody needs to get somewhere. Nobody likes crowded buses. Nobody wants to wait. Things happen. But those bus drivers are very dedicated to what they do. Some are better than others, just like there are other cast members across the entire park and entire campus that are better than others. That's okay. That's life. That's people. We always say, hey, thanks for picking us up. Thanks for the ride. And at the end, thank you very much. Thanks for the ride, and we'll, see you soon. But I will tell you this, Joanne, I love this comment, Joanne. Crowded buses have been great opportunities to meet people from cultures my family may not have otherwise met. Very true. Sometimes we talk about, hey, what did you do today? Hey, where are you from? Hey, I like that hat. Hat person myself. I've met listeners on the bus, which I just think it's an absolute joy. And, you just start talking about things with people, and you just, okay, granted, they're 5-minute relationships, right? 5-minute relationships that you meet, introduce, learn something about them, and then you're off the bus already. 5-minute relationships. And sometimes those are the ones that are just really super fun. All right, a couple more comments, and then I'm going to go on to the next topic. Heather basically mentions, I feel better riding the bus than driving once I'm on property. Those drivers know roads a lot better than I do. And let's see. I think Mary brings up a very good point. They have a hard time loading the handicapped persons, and they know everyone is waiting, and sometimes not patiently. And I love this brunette. She mentions, I've been on a few crowded buses and people started singing. Made it a great ride back to the hotel. Oh my gosh. You know what? That's not bad. That's not bad at all. To sing like that is absolutely hilarious. So it's really, it could be a lot of fun. Yeah, it's one of those cases. And by the way, yes, Heather, the GPSs are horrible right now with all the construction, especially the new entrance to Hollywood studios. Yes, a lot of the GPSs have not been updated. I'm hearing that if you use Google Maps, it should clear up pretty easily. I will also tell you this. With all the different changes, I am going to test OnStar's navigation systems this during my next trip, because I will have the Diz Truck 1 with me, and I am pretty much going to rely on OnStar to get me from point A to point B. It's going to be kind of interesting. It's going to be a nice test. I am going to be running 2 GPSs in that truck as a way to test which system is better. I will be more than happy to provide a report on that. So I know that there's a lot of people that I have, and by the way, go on with that. Chris does mention if people come to the area, he suggests using Google Maps. He drives Uber all over the area. He hasn't had an issue yet. Chris, the only issue that you have had so far is that you have not been able to get me as an Uber ride. That is something that we're going to have to rectify sometime during this next trip. Okay. Next topic, and I'm going to save the fun topic for the very last, but this next topic, I read something, and the funny part is this had nothing to do with Disney, but it had everything to do with gondolas. Okay. How do I put this? How do I even begin to put this? There was a report of over in Europe somewhere. I can't even remember the country or whatever. There was kind of like a gondola mishap, so to speak. No one got hurt. Nobody was on the gondola at the time, but it was because of high winds. And someone showed a picture of, these gondola cars that are kind of like bunched up all together type of thing. And kind of like if you took a shower curtain and you just kind of crunch them together a little bit. It's one of those things where it just looked like obviously a pretty big mishap, but it didn't look like anything fell, didn't look like anything got damaged. But here's the thing. Very much like the comments from the bus incident today. People were already ripping on gondolas and no one knows anything really about them. Ripping on is Disney going to take this into consideration? Is Disney going to, still make these things work, in high winds and storms and so on and so forth? A lot of people have actually bypassed the whole thing about whether or not they're going to have air conditioning, because we know they're not. But, the fact of the matter is people skipped over that for a change and basically decided that they're going to want to, talk about safety. So wait, hold on a minute. The whole thing regarding gondolas beforehand was all about air conditioning and whether or not they were going to be worth it. And now you see something happen, and now you're going to basically wait until this point to worry about safety? Really? Now, hey, Danny and I have already been talking about certain things. I've already made comments in regards to my predictions as to safety of gondolas. And I'm going to tell you something. I would put trust into Disney as to what they're going to be doing in regards to safety for gondolas and every other mode of transportation. People get upset when the monorail stops working because of an electrical storm. Okay? They get upset when it stops working because of an electrical storm. And what happens when a freak storm comes out and it cuts the power out? People get upset because the power got cut out to the monorail. Go figure. People get upset when they shut down the watercraft. And now all of a sudden they've got to figure out another way to get to Disney Springs or get to a resort or whatever. But it's safety. That's like number one. Why are people getting so upset over things that are definitely going to be safety related? I would not even question Disney on this. And that's me. I know it sounds like I'm blindly trusting Disney with it, and that's not really the case. I am just sincerely sure that Disney is going to make sure that things are safe. I am sure that they are going to test the living snot out of the gondola system. It's one of those cases. Mary You're right there. I'm right there with you. People get upset about everything. And unfortunately, here's the other part to it that really kind of makes me upset with this. Social media, and I've said this before, social media has been a double-edged sword to practically everything in our daily lives, right? We don't praise what's good, but we certainly bring up what's bad. And we don't know a lot about anything these days, but yet we're willing to talk about it. And I just, I'm sure that when it comes to something like this, I'm less concerned about the air conditioning, more concerned about safety. That's just me. Okay? It's simple as that. Chris makes mention here, Disney will keep it safe when it comes to controllable issues. They have lightning sensors miles out, and they're not going to operate in thunderstorms. Makes sense, right? Makes total sense. And I'm also sure that there are safety features of these particular units that will make sure that guests are safe. Also, I don't know about you. You're not going to be spending a half an hour in a gondola, from what I understand, given typical speed, typical load time, typical unload time from point A to point B. These are things that basically you just have to kind of take into consideration. If they know that a storm is coming and it's in about 30 minutes is going to get within the warning area, so to speak, of those types of things, they're going to take precautions. They're going to load a last guest. And I guarantee you, when they start up, we're going to hear a guest tweet or post on Facebook somewhere that says, I was just about ready to get on the gondola and they shut it. Now I have to go take a bus. Time wasted. # vacation ruined. People need to stop being so negative and realize Disney doesn't do these things to make guests upset. Disney does these things in order to help guests stay safe. Thank you, Disney. Thank you. I just really, I really believe that. And Justin actually makes a great comment. Disney would not have spent the money they have if they did not research it. Oops, my screen just kind of freaked out on me. Give me a second here, ladies and gentlemen. Disney would not have. We have several ski resorts here where he's at, and they use the very same gondola during the winter and the summer. Great point. Absolutely great point. So I just think that those are some things that we definitely have to take into consideration. I just, Disney's done their research. I believe that. I really don't have any issue with it, to be honest with you. I really don't. I just know that, people really need to stop and take a look at some things. Okay. This is a point where I'm going to pause the show for 1 second. I need to adjust something on my screen for some reason. In its wonderful tradition, my second monitor decided to shut off on me. So I need to just go ahead and change something here. Click this here. Click this here. Click this here. Wait for the other screen to turn on. Wait for the image to show. Click OK. And there. And so we begin. So I'm really glad I'm seeing something here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post this up here. This is from Jamie. He says, I'll slightly disagree, Chris. Disney is taking some heat from monorail issues, and it seems to be getting worse. People naturally begin to ask questions. Also, consider the weather in Florida. I'm not one of those people, as I'm sure that they'll have taken every precaution and safety measure, but I can understand how people would question it. Yeah, I get it. I'm going to talk about the monorail in a minute. Trust me, that's definitely one of the things I want to talk about tonight. But, the thing is that I don't mind the natural questions of things. I really don't. I think people should question. I'm not going to question the idea that Disney is taking safety seriously. I'm not going to question that. But I think there are some good questions. And maybe a lot of them are curiosity questions for me, such as, what are they going to do? How are they going to determine it? What are going to be their alternatives? Are they going to automatically bump up some busing in anticipation for some of those routes that are served by the gondolas? in the event of inclement weather. It's one of those things. And Brian also mentions the gondolas are going to be safe in lightning and thunder. It's the high winds that'll stop them. And I believe that too. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I think a lot of people are afraid of having them get struck by lightning. The fact of the matter is, those types of modes of transportation are usually specially grounded, specially protected, where even if you got hit directly, it's not, the passengers will be safe. I mean, you got to think of it this way. These are being used all around the world, and you have to protect from that sort of thing. So it is really one of those cases. And Nathan also mentions, "Hey Nathan, how you doing, my friend? Long time no see." He's like, "I trust in Disney." Yeah, I believe it. And even Jamie goes, I would also add that there is more danger in riding a bus than a monorail, gondola, or boat. It's one of those things. So we're going to talk a little bit about the monorails here. And I think it's a good conversation to have, because let's face it, there are some things about the monorail system that I think do warrant some comments. I really do. So here's the deal. Earlier this week, it's been reported that one of the monorails basically had some doors that wouldn't open. Now, the joke to this was, well, gee, at least they don't have doors opening on their own. They don't have doors falling off, so on and so forth. Okay? I get it. But this obviously did not make guests happy. And, it took a while to get things taken care of. But the fact of the matter is that, okay, I have a special place in my heart for monorails. I love monorails. My wife loves monorails. And I miss the days of being able to ride up in front. I remember back when the monorails still had like a partition in the middle of each partition, instead of having room to be able to put a scooter or easily a stroller. It was just one of those things. But here's the thing. I don't know what happened with the doors. Everybody's speculating. Nobody is reporting. I would only assume that if they failed safe. I would much rather see a guest be inconvenienced through a door that wouldn't open versus doors that accidentally open somehow because of, somebody leaned up against it wrong or what have you. Or in some cases, let's face it, the last thing that came about, as we all saw, as we all reported, it was because someone smacked it with a scooter. I don't blame Disney for something like that. I really don't. But here's the deal. Everybody's been saying, hey, Disney, get the monorails fixed. Fix the monorails. Get the new ones in. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's going to take a while for those new monorails to get here. It's as simple as that. It's going to take a while for those monorails to get here. It's not like building a car where you can, basically build a car in 24 hours. And you can build, 1,000 cars a day. Building one of those monorails is a big deal. It's a train. It's really what it is. It's a big train, but instead of being entirely made of steel, it's made out of, fiberglass components and aluminum, and other big things like that. It's a big deal. So, it's one of those cases where I think people need to understand the complexities of getting something like this refurbed. We know that they're on their way. Regardless of what's being said in the comments, we know they're on their way. Now, what stage they're in, that's another question. We know that they are expecting to come. We know that there's going to be new monorail cars coming. We know that in the meantime, our own unprofessional observations as guests, we know that the monorails need some loving before that time. I know that people either love the monorails or hate them. And the reason why I say it like that is because there's a lot of people that say, you know what, they're old, they smell, they're dilapidated, they're really way overdue for a refurb, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? I don't necessarily disagree. Although I have to say this, and I think this is funny. I just think the whole funny part to this is that I've been on other monorails outside of Disney. Some of them have that same smell. It's hilarious. It's just one of those things. And I don't know. It's just one of those things. I'm just using that as a funny example. Faith, I love this. She says, maybe they're using the new maybe they are the new Lego monorails and it's taking a while to assemble. I love it. I really think that's actually pretty funny. Mary's basically commenting, Disney just waited too long to fix the monorails. I don't necessarily disagree with that. It's, let's see. Justin claims they take approximately 10 months to make and then they have to be shipped. Possibly. And yes, the Disney monorails are different. They are actually, the Disney monorails are really, wow. I mean, what's the best way of putting it? It's a different experience riding the Disneyland monorails. They're much smaller, from a height perspective. You have to sit down. You can't stand. And I kind of think that I feel more jammed in them. I'll be really honest, but I think it's really cool that the monorails, go through the parks. And the funny part to it is the monorail station outside, there's a monorail station outside the park and you actually, scan your ticket, etc. at the entrance of the monorail. And when you get on the monorail, you're technically in the park and then it lets off. And then, you can pick up the monorail and then it goes through and then you get off outside of the park. It's actually I think it's actually really pretty cool. And, the thing of it is that I really liked those monorails. They looked sleek. They just had that really cool look to them. I mean, I love both of them. It's kind of like, which kind of car do I like? Being a car buff, it's like, oh man, that's hard to say. I just think it's very interesting to see what kind of monorail they're going to end up coming. So the thing of it is that my whole take on it. Oh yeah. And also I will say this, the outside of the monorail looks futuristic. I agree with Albert here. I just think that they are really, really super, super cool. So here's the thing. I like what Joanne says. This tall kid is thankful we can stand in the Walt Disney World version. Yeah, I don't mind it either. But I do know that they're going to be getting these new monorail cars and we will rejoice when they come. I don't think that anything that Disney is doing with the monorails or not doing, as the case may be, is, I don't think they're doing anything to sacrifice safety, first and foremost. I think right now, they're seeing this as a really sense of some bad luck. That's just my 2 cents. We talk about we talk about not leaning on the door, like Chris just mentioned here. And the funny part is that we always joked around, please stand clear of the doors, por favor, puertas. Sorry, I just don't know that, but I know puertas. I know puertas is a door. And we joke around about that. We put it on mugs. We put them on T-shirts. We get bumper stickers and window decals that say stuff like that. And we joke around about it. It's one of those cases. But when people don't follow those little safety guidelines, something could happen. The one with the door that opened, no one really knows how it happened. someone's, is someone going to claim something that happened that didn't happen? I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those things. And it's kind of interesting. We hear questions like this all the time, like what Ryan puts up here. Isn't the new monorails going to be up for the anniversary? Chris says doubtful. I don't know. Yes, that's exactly what I meant, by the way, Stan. Please stand clear of the doors. But, the fact of the matter is that we know they're coming. Are they going to replace the whole fleet at one time? I don't know. Are they going to take the monorails down while they, switch over to the new monorails themselves and then test? And then everybody get upset because there's no monorails? And why did I stay at a monorail resort hotel when there's no monorails? I want people to relax a little bit. It's a monorail. And yes, it is an icon to the parks. They are loved by millions. And they have transferred people from point A to point B millions of times without incident. And sometimes I just really honestly feel that we need to realize that some of these things happen. Only one time in the past almost 20 years have I had a monorail really get delayed for, an extended period of time. But it was only like 20 minutes. I'm not saying I'm the benchmark. I'm just saying that, in the words of a friend of mine from work, it's not your fault. It's just your turn. Sometimes stuff happens. So it's one of those things. And I have to echo what Nancy is saying here. And she says, I know one thing. It's going to be an exciting day when Walt Disney World finally gets their new monorail trains. I wonder if there'll be any major design changes. I bet you there probably will be some sort of design changes. Although I think it's going to be very logical to say that they will probably share very similar external dimensions that they have right now. So they do not have to change the tracks, that they would not have to change the stations. And, I think that makes a lot of sense. They're going to have certain parameters that they're going to have to live by in order to basically, put a new car on the track and let it run. And I bet you any money they're going to have a lot new tech on those trains in order to be safe. And I bet you they're even going to have tech on the inside. I speculated that when they first announced it. I bet you any money that, there'll be a much more ergonomic use of space, but I bet you any money they're going to look pretty awesome. They may look very similar, maybe just some tweaks. I don't know. They're pretty space agey look to begin with and very aerodynamic to boot. Chris mentions, after the last time I got stuck on a monorail at the Floridian, I now lie and tell the security guard at the Contemporary that I'm dropping off an Uber and sneak into the parking lot until the monorails are fixed. Contemporary is my full-time Magic Kingdom parking spot. Lol. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, Chris, and I'm sorry I didn't screen that comment a lot sooner. Oh, wait. That wasn't Chris. That was... No, I'm just kidding. So, it's one of those things. But, it's kind of interesting. And Alex, you're right. Monorails run on tires. They actually are suspended on tires instead of an actual metal type track. And that's actually, I think, for efficiency. In other words, they're able to stop quicker. They're able to accelerate quicker. Metal on metal type track. That's just really hard to keep going. A lot of wear. So it's just one of those things. Oh, by the way, Chris, you're getting called out by John by saying, don't back up my security line at Bay Lake. So, we'll just have to put that there. All right. Those are the three things that kind of came up in Disney news. And I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm ranting a little bit. I'm siding with Disney on all these types of items in the sense of people making comments out there that really I think are a little unfounded. And I just think that we as guests, we need to be better guests. I know that sounds like a real big stretch, and I know there might be people that disagree with me. Hey, you know what? I respectfully accept your disagreement. And I think we've had some pretty good comments tonight to talk about that. The thing is that we know that Disney's not perfect, but we know that Disney's not going to put us purposely in the path of any sort of danger or any sort of safety issue. It's just one of those cases. And, you know, I sometimes feel like the social media aspect of it has really put Disney in a crap light at times. And I don't think it's fair to Disney. I just really think that at times it can be a real challenge for a big company at Disney to try to please everybody. But then there's that old adage. If you try to please everybody, you'll end up pleasing nobody. And I think that's very true. So it's one of those cases where, I just think the social media really hurts. All right. So if we get more input on these particular news items, we can go ahead and chat about them in a future episode. But it's kind of interesting. I really enjoyed this type of conversation. But we have a little bit of time left. And, you know, if you have something else that you would like to chat about, I will try to catch it here in the comment section from the most awesome comment section from the most awesome audience of all of live streaming and live podcast recording. It's just one of those things. I am going to post this comment up here by Michelle. She says, hey, you're right on. We do need to be better guests. People get so mad at things that just happen and want Disney to give them some freebies. So sad. You know, here's the thing, though. I always got to be careful because I don't think everybody wants a freebie. Although we know it happens. Let's face it, we know it happens. But I do think we do have a lot of people that love to type on a keyboard a lot. I really do. Let's see. Justin also mentions, not a rant at all. Thank you. I appreciate that. People just need to be patient. If I learned anything from working for Disney as a cast member, it is to be patient. Not only for yourself, but for the guests around. I really agree with you there. Albert also makes mention, at least Disney is recognizing some items need updating and are taking the time and money to do that. And I would agree. I think a lot of people would also say a little bit, you know, what is it? Too little, too late. You know, it's going to take a while to get things, you know, taken care of. So here's the thing. Here's the question. If Disney's doing it and it takes a long time to do it, would you rather have the monorail go totally out of service? Would you rather have all the boats go out of service? Would you rather have all the buses go out of service? Would you rather have the gondolas not happen at all? It's one of the hugest fleets of transportations owned by one company. And let's face it, everything needs maintenance. And you know what? Sometimes stuff happens. It's how we react to it, I think, makes a big difference here. 75,000 cast members. You're going to have stuff like that happen once in a while. Important thing is how did I read it? Important thing is it was taken care of. Wow. You wrote it right. I couldn't read it worth anything. So it's one of those cases. You know, but Disney puts them on a shelf, on the top shelf. So many expect it 24/7, 365. Very true. So let's take a look at something here. I'm gonna post something here from our friend Stan Solo. Stan makes mention with all the Marvel stuff coming to Disneyland Paris. What do you think it would take for the Universal Marvel deal to end? You want my opinion? I think the only thing that is going to cause that whole Universal Marvel deal to change on the East Coast is if Disney buys out Universal. To be honest with you, I'm sure every contract can change. I'm sure that if anything else, money changes everything in a case like that. But I think that that is something that's going to take a long time to negotiate, if they're even really interested in negotiating it. I know a lot of people would love to see the different Marvel tie-ins at Walt Disney World, very similar to DLP or even Disneyland Resort in California. I do think that, there's always that possibility. I don't think that's a never situation. It's more of a when and how much situation. That is my 2 cents, Stan. Thank you so much for posting that up there. Let's see. Mary makes mention here. The thing that really annoys me is when I see people being rude to cast members when it's something out of their control. Very true. And you know what? I'll tell you what. One thing I keep on saying is to cast members, I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for making my time magical. And I'll admit, if I see a cast member kind of get chewed out by another guest, I'll just look at him and I'll say quietly, hey, you handled that well. You did okay. Take a deep breath. I'm going to be your best guest today. And they smile. And hopefully I make their day by being the best guest possible. It's as simple as that. Let's see. I'm going through some lists here. Oh, gosh. This is a good point. And Trish, I'm going to comment on this here in a minute. You have the ones that get mad at Disney and others that protect Disney as if it were their own child. One thing I'm going to say about that is for one, I like to think of things from a logic and reason perspective. Danny sometimes has different opinions of these types of items too. I totally get it. In fact, one of the most recent shows that we talked about, Danny had some hot takes on this too, on some of these topics. I don't defend Disney like it's my own child, because sometimes my child is wrong, and sometimes I have to side with the teacher. I realize that might be a little more rare these days, but the fact of the matter is that I don't really care to see, I don't care to see things swept under the rug. And at the same time, I love Disney and I will defend Disney. But if Disney is messing something up, I will certainly state an opinion. I think things need to be taken care of, but I'm sure Disney is going to be taking care of them. It's just that, again, I think social media has not really helped the situation, but I think Disney is taking care of things. Otherwise, we would have a system that would break down so fast, all transportation would come to a screaming halt. That's the thing. So this is interesting, Chris. He basically states the weird thing is I got an email from Universal Annual Pass Office asking what interests me more, Harry Potter or Star Wars. Whew, that's a tough one, especially if, you happen to like both universes. That's a really interesting. I'm almost afraid to ask you, Chris, which one did you put down? But I myself, I guess you could say I'm not necessarily a Harry Potter fan, only because I have not taken the time to read the books or even watch the movies. So I can't say I don't like Harry Potter. I just haven't been exposed to Harry Potter. But it's one of those cases. I really do believe. Let's see what else is going on here. I'm going to kind of, let's see. Oh, first off, I'm going to go ahead and throw this up. Stan makes a comment. I like it that both you and Danny tell it like it is and call a spade a spade. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. The nice part about what Danny and I do is we both do things differently. That's part of our motto. Everybody does Disney differently. And the fact of the matter is he and I see it through different eyes. And I think that's so cool. I've learned so much on different viewpoints by working with him on this show. And I'm hoping that he sees the same with me as well. So I really do believe that is just how it goes. And Chris, by the way, did mention he always got to go with Disney, is what he says. I only do Universal for the free Mardi Gras concerts. There you go. Hey, if that's what you find value in while being a local, and that's what you get your money's worth out of your annual passes for Universal, great. It's one of those cases. And Christina actually mentions, hey, I love Harry Potter, but I can't wait for the Star Wars stuff to be out at Hollywood Studios. I'll be honest with you. Oh, there is one thing I want to comment on that. Most recently, over the last week, someone made a comment about how they're expecting crowds of like 200,000 people to be lined up for Star Wars lands out both in California as well as Walt Disney World. And I didn't read the article because I first thing I thought was that has got to be the most absurd headline that I've ever seen in my life. Not the fact that there could be 200,000 people lined up, but does anybody really know what 200,000 people in one place looks like? Yeah.
Disney would not do that to the park because it has a capacity limit and it's well before 200,000. I know that there are going to be every Disney blogger, vlogger, and content creator that wants to be there for opening day or very shortly thereafter. I'll be honest with you. We're trying to do that too. But if not, I'm not going to worry about it because I know it's going to be a madhouse of epic proportion. But we'll have to we'll have to really look at, when it's going to happen and what kind of things are going to happen during the first several weeks, if not several months, of Galaxy's Edge opening up. So I will tell you this. We're getting towards the top of our time together. And I've really enjoyed this solo show. Sometimes these solo shows can be a little difficult. But I'm really glad that we got a chance to cover the news in a way that, quite honestly, a little bit different. I'm glad some people kind of challenged me a little bit. I loved seeing your comments. But for right now, take a listen to this. You heard the show, and we hope you want more. Well, feel free to join us over at our social media platforms. Instagram and our Facebook page can be found at Behind the Ears Podcast. Our webpage is behindtheearspodcast.net, and our email is behindtheearspodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @BehindTheEarsPC. And come and join the conversation about all things Disney over at the WDW community page. Don't forget to rate and review the show over at iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it really helps us get the word out about the show. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or the Podbean app. Also, you can listen to us on Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and via Alexa and Google Home. All right, everybody. Well, we're coming to an end right now. I just want to, before we go, I kind of want to just give a little shout out to a new viewer named Michelle. Michelle, thanks for joining us tonight. I know that you messaged me earlier about how to watch. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Do us a favor. Give us a watch over here over at the Behind the Ears podcast page, as not only here on Tuesday nights, also on Thursday nights. We love to interact with everybody. And don't forget, everybody, you can go ahead and download our show from iTunes. I also know that people listen to us over on Spotify. And generally speaking, anywhere where you can find your favorite podcast, there we will be. Wow, this has been quite a show. And quite honestly, I know I did not actually hit many of the comments and questions, and I'm going to probably have to go through some of them. As most of you know, I already have plans to going through some of those particular items very shortly, like within the next 24 hours. But until we meet again, I'll tell you what, thanks again for joining us, and I hope you have an absolutely magical day. Take care.